Okay, good afternoon, students. I hope you are very well at your home. Yesterday, we have finished chapter number 1, that is reproduction in organisms. So, let us start chapter number 2, sexual reproduction in flowering plants. So, as a title, as a heading itself, help us to understand that is, the flowering plants are able to reproduce sexually, isn't it? So, what actually are flowers? What actually are flowers? Flowers are the sexual part of the plants. So when a flower blooms on a plant, it indicates that it is ready for sexual reproduction. And the relationship between the flowers and human beings have been since time immemorial, isn't it? So flowers have been the objects of aesthetic, ornamental, and social, religious, and cultural value, and they've been used in different symbols, especially in human feelings, like for example, like love, affection, happiness, grief, mourning. So all these, the flowers play a very important role, right? So for a biologist or to a biologist, what are flowers then? To a biologist, flowers are morphological and embryological marvels and the sites of sexual reproduction. Now, before we go into the other aspects, let us understand the structure of a typical bisexual flower, right? So the figure 2.1 here shows you about the longitudinal section of a bisexual flower. Why we say bisexual? Because it has got both the male and as well as the female sexual parts. Okay, so what other parts are there? Let us find out from here, from this diagram. The first part is the sepals. You can see here at the bottom, which are green in color, right? And then we have the yellow ones, which are called as petals. The petals are there. The petals are beautifully colored, right? And then we have the stamens, which has been having a long filament and then anther at the tip. Okay, so there are many stamens here in this flower shown to you. And then of course we have the female part. The female part is the what do you call a carpel or pistil, and which is having a swollen ovary and then a long style, and then also it has a stigma, right? So these are the parts of a typical bisexual flower, a typical bisexual flower. So if you just happen to visit your school garden or nearby your places or anywhere, any garden, you can find how many beautiful flowers are there, and then you know what is this refers to, right? This cultivation of flowers is said to be called as a floriculture. You can see here. So flowers and culture, it is the art of growing the flowers. That is floriculture. Okay, children. Now let us go into the various other aspects of this flowers. Now, how does a flower initiates in a flowering plant? Right. So usually what happens? Several hormonal and structural changes occur in plants. What are they? Several hormonal and structural changes occur in plants that leads to differentiation, and that leads to the formation of a flower primordium. So what is flower primordium? Before the flower arises or before the flower erupts on a branch, so there are certain changes, several hormonal changes are there, okay, leading to some other structural changes which leads to the formation of flowers. Flowers can be born singly or it may be in the inflorescence. That is, last year you have read about inflorescence, a cluster of flowers, a group of flowers on a stalk, right? So in this section now, let us go back to the other important aspects of this part. Okay, now let us see the male part of the plant now. So the first male part, that is the first male part of the plant, which we say as stamens, stamen, men, men. So what does it means? Men means the male, so that means the male sexual part of the plant. So you can see here in this diagram of figure 2.2a, there is a diagram of a typical stamen, and this stamen is represented by a long filament, and then we have a anther at the tip, right? So this constitutes a stamen, right? So in between the anther and the filament, the point of attachment is said to be called as a connective. So that is there between the anther and filament. There is a connective by which the filament gets attached to the anther. Right. So the male, that is a long cylindrical part called filament, and the terminally structure which is called as a anther, which is called anther. Now if you look at the what you call anther, right? If you take the typical angiospermic anther, each of this typical angiospermic anther has two lobes. How many lobes? There are two lobes, as you can see in the diagram, and that is called bilobed, and each lobe is having two theca. So that what are they? Each typical angiospermic anther is bilobed, having each lobe, and there are two thecae in each lobes, and therefore it is called as a dithecous anther. Dithecous anther, and you can also see there's a long line, a groove that runs lengthwise and that separates the two thecae, and this is called the line of dehiscence. So what is happening here? So this line of dehiscence is that line when the anther gets matured. So this what you call line of dehiscence, anther erupts or dehisces, releasing all the pollen grains into the air. Okay, so we have understood certain important aspects of the stamen, that is anther. So each anther is typical anther is bilobed, having each lobe having two thecae, and therefore they are called as dithecous anther. Right. Now coming to the other part of it, suppose if you look at the inside part of the there is a pollen grain that is inside the theca. Okay, inside the theca. You can see here in diagram 2.3, there's a transverse section of a young anther. No, this is a young anther, and I can see here at each of these corners, no, there are corners that are actually called as a microsporangia. So these are four microsporangia at each of the corners, right? And you can see these microsporangia are actually in a young state. Okay, and then also you can see there is a connective tissue in between them, and since it is young, okay, what happens after the formation of microspores and all, they will be getting fused, and that is called as a pollen sac. So here actually there will be two pollen sacs, right? So the young anther will show four what you call microsporangium. Okay, now if you look at the transverse section of each of the microsporangium, now look at that. An arrow mark has been shown, and let us see the first aspect of this here. Each of this microsporangium appears to be circular in outline, okay, and has got four walls. Okay, what are those walls? Four walls. The four walls are starting from outward to inward is epidermis. Epi means above, dermis means inside, so that's outermost layer, epidermis, and then we have got the endothecium. The layer beneath the epidermis is endothecium. Then we have got some 2 to 4 layers of middle layers, and then the last one we have the tapetum. Okay, so what are these? Epidermis, endothecium, middle layers, and tapetum. So these are the four different what you call layers in each of this microsporangium. Now what is the function of these three layers? Epidermis, endothecium, middle layers. Okay, so what do? They provide protection to the developing pollen grains. That means, so there are something very important things have been developed inside the microsporangia, right? So therefore, they are giving protection to these microsporangia. As a result, the pollen grains which will be developing inside, so they give protection to them, right? And what about the tapetum? Look at the cells of tapetum here. Now, if you look at the structure of these tapetal cells, they are quite different from the compared to the other three layers. Okay, so how they are look like? They are usually multinucleate, and then they are having a dense cytoplasm. So cells of tapetum are multinucleate, okay, and they have dense cytoplasm. And what is the function of this tapetum? The tapetum provides the nourishment to the developing pollen grains. Okay, so what is the function? It provides the nourishment to the developing pollen grains. Okay, now inside the what you call tapetum, there is actually called the sporogenous tissue. Sporogenous tissue, right? The cells of the sporogenous tissue, which are diploid, that is having two N, right? And as a result, these what you call sporogenous tissue, which are diploid cells, they now get differentiated into microspore mother cell, otherwise called pollen mother cell. Okay, you can see here pollen mother cell or microspore mother cell, MMC, they commonly call MMC or PMC. And each of these pollen mother cell undergoes what you call divisions, and they give rise to a microspore tetrad. They give rise to microspore tetrad. The diagram here shows, that is, look at the C diagram. The diagram C shows you that how anther has been matured, and you can see many of the pollen grains are formed inside. Look at the dehiscence, line of dehiscence. That is, the pollen sacs are exposed now, and these pollen grains are now ready to be dispersed into the air. So in that way, we can say that the sporogenous tissue plays a very vital role because it contains a pollen mother cell. Okay, so what is this pollen mother cell, or what is that microsporogenesis, right? So let us see here. Microsporogenesis means the formation of microspores from a pollen mother cell. Okay, the process of formation of microspores from a pollen mother cell, okay, is known as microsporogenesis. So usually I told you the sporogenous tissue, which is consisting of a pollen mother cell, right? So it is diploid. So therefore what happens here, this diploid pollen mother cell or microspore mother cell undergoes reduction division, meiosis, right? Entire meiosis occurs in two steps, the two stages, that is meiosis 1 and meiosis 2, and leading to formation of 4 what you call tetrad. That is why it is called pollen tetrad, 4 pollen tetrad. And you know what will be the ploidy of these pollen tetrad? Yes, yeah, the pollen tetrad having the ploidy of haploid, because they have been formed by the process of what you call reduction division. So therefore they will be, that is, they will be haploid in nature. So what about the pollen grains now? The pollen grain actually is a male gametophyte, right? The pollen grain is actually represents the male gametophyte. Okay, and each of these pollen grains are very small, tiny, about what you call 25 to 50 micrometers in diameter, and they're very spherical in nature. Okay, and they have got two important layers. They got two important layers on it. Okay, so I can see here, right? The outer layer, which we call, is very tough, is called exine. Outer layer is very tough, it is called as exine, and inner is called as a intine. It's called intine. The exine is made up of sporopollenin. What is it made up of? The exine is made up of sporopollenin, and this sporopollenin is the most resistant organic material, right, which can withstand very high temperatures, and is also resistant to strong acids and alkali. And it is to be worth mentioning here that there is no enzyme that degrades sporopollenin so far. So it's a very important thing. So sporopollenin is present on the exine, and there is no enzyme that can degrade the sporopollenin, right? So this exine has prominent apertures called germ pores. Wait, what is a germ pore? Now look at the exine. The exine is actually covered, having what you call the sporopollenin, which is made up of sporopollenin. And then in some areas, the sporopollenin is absent. So, and at that stages, at that places, we have the germ pores. Germ pores. So these germ pores, okay, they will be facilitating the many different types of activities, like the entry of the, that is the coming of the pollen tube, and then entering into the female gametophyte, and many other things. Okay, so pollen grains are well preserved, as fossils, because of the presence of sporopollenin. Okay, and they help a great what you call study in paleontology, right? We can study about these pollen grains, and we can study about the past plants and trees which lived some millions of years ago, right? So, and when this pollen grain is mature, it consists of two cells. Now look at this, what do you call the pollen grain, right? So pollen grain, if you look at the pollen grain, okay, it consists of two cells, no? So it is undergoing division. The series of stages has been shown here. Look at that. The pollen grain shows two cells. One is a very large vegetative cell, right? And then the second one called as a generative cell, right? So usually about in 60% of the flowering plants, most of the pollen grains will be shed at this two cell stage. Yeah, right. And in some other species, the pollen grains are liberated at three cell stage, right, where the generative cell. Now what does the generative cell means? The generative cell means generate, In the sense, it will be able to generate. What does it generate? It generates two male gametes. That is the importance of that. Okay, so vegetative cell, which may be helping in growth, okay, which has got a nucleus and other dense cytoplasm, a lot of reserve food material, right? And a generative cell, which will be having the ability to give rise to two male gametes. So as a result of that, the three cell stage, okay, will be formed, and the pollen grains will be what you call released into the environment. Okay, I think you have seen some plants, okay, where if you inhale the pollen grains of certain plants like Parthenium, which is commonly called as carrot grass. It's a very common weed that has been grown and that grows everywhere. Okay, with white, tiny white flowers. So these pollen grains, the pollen grains of these plants are highly allergic. Okay, and if you try to inhale them or by means of any air, okay, you develop some allergic reactions to it. Okay, children. So therefore, these are having a very what do you call dangerous activities, and also in some people it may cause even asthma and bronchitis. Okay, pollen grains usually are rich in nutrients. Okay, pollen grains are rich in nutrients, and therefore they what do you call they have been used as food supplements in many of these what do you call organisms. Like for example, they have been given to horse races, especially during racing, where they increases their efficiency, and also it can be given in the form of what you call tablets or syrups, even given to athletes to improve their performances. So in that case, we can say these pollen consumption. Okay, so we can see here in these pictures we got pollen products. Okay, then we have got the other in the form of small capsules or tablets which are available. Okay, which can be consumed. Okay, children. So this what you call pollen are of great important things. Okay. Now importantly, we also know that we can also pollen grains can be preserved for years in liquid nitrogen. That is about 196 degrees centigrade, minus 196 degrees centigrade. So at this temperature, we can store them, and especially they are available in pollen banks. We have just like our normal bank where we can store money. Okay, we have got gene banks. So similarly, there are pollen banks. Pollen banks are those institutes or research institutes where we are storing the pollens. Okay, and that is stored in liquid nitrogen about minus 190 degree centigrade. Okay, so they don't lose viability and they can be used, okay, in crop breeding programs. So as you know, since they represent the male gametophyte, so therefore this process can be used in what you call male gameto, that is in crop breeding programs, which again we will learn in some other higher classes or in this chapter, the later chapters, where you can learn more about this process. Okay, children. So with this, we have tried to finish about up to microsporangium, that is microsporogenesis. Hope you have understood very well. Stay at home, stay safe, and also stay healthy. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.